Instead of starting my videos off saying, welcome to another episode of Smash JT, I feel like part of it should be, you can't spell ignorant without IGN, because holy crap, this is a new low. What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of Smash JT. IGN is apparently refusing to review the remake of Lollipop Chainsaw RePop. Why? Because it doesn't fit their narrative, of course. And again, this move goes to prove that these outlets do not care about video games. They don't care about gamers. They care about a narrative, an agenda, and a message to push forward. And oh, by the way, they did review Lollipop Chainsaw Massacre when it first came out. Mitch Dyer gave it a 5 out of 10, which I guess is an average game, just 2 points below Dustborn. Man, if only Lollipop Chainsaw RePop could have been anywhere close to as good as that Game of the Year candidate Dustborn in IGN's eyes. Smash JT. Hit that subscribe, give me a like, and check out SmashJT.com for the full article breaking down how IGN is refusing to review the remake of Lollipop Chainsaw RePop. Because by their own words, there's not much different. It's the same game, just a new coat of paint. We don't need to re-review the game. We've already done that. We gave it a 5 out of 10. If you have any questions, just check out that old review. In a move that's left many gamers scratching their heads, IGN is refusing to review the Lollipop Chainsaw RePop remake. Yeah, I get it. Even if you think IGN's a terrible organization, you'd think at least they'd still do a re-review of a pretty big re-release. A game that a lot of people have been talking about and looking forward to for a very long time. Apparently IGN feels like this isn't worth reviewing because, let's be honest, it doesn't fit their message. Mangalawyer on Twitter said, IGN is unwilling to review Lollipop Chainsaw RePop, probably because it might trigger some of the they-them staff. Instead, they published an article announcing the launch, but reminded the audience that they gave the game a 5 out of 10, which is unfair. How are they still in business? A great question, because clearly right here, IGN is trying to slander any potential possibility of a game like this getting any kind of a following because they don't want to see these kind of games succeed. Instead of providing an honest review with a fresh perspective, IGN is opting to publish an article simply announcing the game's launch without hesitating to take a jab at its past by reminding everyone of the mediocre 5 out of 10 score that they originally gave it. And this original score came from a reviewer by the name of Mitch Dyer, a guy I'd never really heard of before, not interacted with ever, and he's already blocked me on Twitter. So I guess it makes more sense to call him Bitch Dyer instead. But let's talk about his so-called 5 out of 10 score for a moment. Back in the day, IGN labeled the original Lollipop Chainsaw a mediocre title. But let's face it, by today's standards, this game would easily hit the 7 mark because everything coming out of IGN is a 7. At least it starts at a 7. Unless the game doesn't inject DEI into it, which I guess Lollipop Chainsaw Massacre doesn't do that, so maybe it actually would still fall below that. But we're talking about games like Dustborn getting a 7 out of 10, Concord getting a 7 out of 10, and then looking at Lollipop Chainsaw Massacre, and they're refusing to re-review it, and instead pointing everyone to the 5 out of 10 that they gave it years ago. Let's take a quick look at what Bitch Dyer had to say about his Lollipop Chainsaw review. When finishing fast is just fine. I'm sure he thinks he's very witty with that one. If you asked 100 people what they loved about Lollipop Chainsaw, you'd get 100 different answers. And exactly 0 of them would have anything to do with the part where you play it. You'd hear about the grindhouse style, brilliant comedy, shocking vulgarity, totally rock and roll soundtrack, or clashing themes. Nobody's indistinctive answer would be, oh yeah, the combat was a lot of fun. This is the struggle of Lollipop Chainsaw. It's a one-of-a-kind experience, a game as fearless as it is unforgettable, and it's as sterile as action games come. Which is one of the wildest things you can say about a game giving it a 5 out of 10 when you literally talk about how amazing every aspect of the game is, and just one part of it you didn't find particularly entertaining, which, yes, I would agree, in an action combat game, the fighting part is probably the biggest part, but honestly, the environment, the soundtrack, and the overall experience of the game should count for a hell of a lot more than what Bitch is giving it credit for here. In his final verdict, he says, Lollipop Chainsaw doesn't even attempt to differentiate itself from the genre, and most of what it does try new in the realm of its characters and writing ultimately ends up taking away from an incredible on-paper action game. The music and sidekick are really all you can rely on to stay great from start to finish. The rest of Lollipop Chainsaw is all over the place before it ultimately settles for mediocrity and disappointment. Which is fine, you're allowed to have your own perspective in a review. It's just kind of funny how so many people have loved this game over the years and have taken quite an issue with IGN's stance on it. Firefighter 1997 said, "One of the best games I've ever played. Ridiculous review." And this is a game that IGN is not going to review again unless they get enough public pressure on them, put on them to say, okay, yeah, we're going to do it just to prove to everyone that we can do it. But I have a feeling IGN is worried about re-reviewing this and then having everyone come down on them saying, oh, you're giving it a 5 out of 10, a 6 out of 10, when just last week you gave Dustborn and Concord 7 out of 10s? It shows the flaws in your rating systems and opens you up for so much criticism that we all know you can't handle. Ghost Specs on Twitter said, "Isn't that the point? The game is true to its original and doesn't need to differentiate itself. It's a remaster, for heaven's sake. Inverse IGN as usual. Whatever they say is not good, gotta be great. Wasn't going to buy the game, but now I'm changing my mind." Cross/Game on Twitter said, "Back in the day, IGN gave it a 5, but Dustborn and Concord a 7 by today's standards. By today's standards, this remaster should be at least a 7, but IGN would probably give it a 2. And here's the thing, it's a predicament, a corner that they've boxed themselves into because they've given these other games higher scores that it makes them look so terrible, giving a quality experience a 5 out of 10. If they go back and re-review it, that would basically be like slapping Bitch Dyer in the face for an awful take on this cult classic. But no, somebody needs to tell IGN that this game is for actual gamers, you know, not propaganda pushers or quote-unquote journalists. We all know why they don't like it. They just don't like anything that appeals to real gamers anymore. And this right here is definitive proof of that. But Smash, they don't have to re-review a game. They've already reviewed it. I understand where IGN's coming from. Okay, you know what? I might actually understand that perspective if they've never re-reviewed re-releases again. But they've done it time and time again. Remakes, remasters, re-releases. The same games coming out on newer systems have gotten re-reviews on them. The Last of Us comes to mind, where it originally reviewed as a perfect 10, but then the remake, re-release of it was a 9. Or how they reviewed Final Fantasy X/X2 HD, not once, but twice, first on the PS3, then on the PS4. Clearly, they have no issues with re-reviewing a re-release, except when it comes to a game that doesn't push their proper message. The hypocrisy is astounding here. If IGN doesn't want to review Lollipop Chainsaw RePop, fine. Don't review it, but don't think you can subtly undermine the game while refusing to even give it a fair chance. If you're not going to play by the rules, don't play at all. These vile creatures in the media are trying to dictate how gamers should approach the hobby. They continue to twist narratives to fit their agenda, pushing their feelings against the patriarchy over fairness and real gamers. And it's clear as day why IGN is floundering, why they are losing attention, care, passion. Gamers don't go there anymore for reasons like this. Their credibility's at rock bottom. It's clear they've forgotten their roots and now are more interested in gatekeeping content based on how it fits their ever-evolving standards. But the audience isn't blind. We're tired of seeing these obvious double standards. We all deserve better, and we're not afraid to say it. But hey, thanks to the continuing drop the ball, sites like SmashJT.com, That Park Place, Bounding Into Comics, Fandom Pulse, Minimal Effort, and so many other individual creators and smaller news outlets are gaining such a huge foothold these days because of the constant ball drop and propaganda pushing that these major outlets are doing. It's clear as day, and they're getting so angry at all of us eating their lunch because they don't like people telling the truth. And at the end of the day, I'd like to think that's all people really care about. Huge shout out to Mangalawyer on Twitter for bringing this to my attention. It is a complete disaster. Like, IGN really needs to pick the ball up that they dropped and definitely review this game, because it is a terrible look to not have someone take another look at it, even giving a fresh perspective, even if it flies in the face of Bitch Dyer and someone gives it a 7 out of 10 or an 8 out of 10. Here's the thing, they've gotten their wires so twisted with giving Dustborn a 7 and Concord a 7 that they've literally backed themselves into a corner when it comes to reviewing any games, because gamers will always look at those games and be like, oh, so Dustborn's better than this, or Concord's better than this. They can't win. It's embarrassing, and at the end of the day, they did it to themselves. Anyways, I'm going to leave it there. If you guys appreciate what I'm doing, hit that join button. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, you stay smashing. Smash,